This morning I sat in the same chair, in the same room, in the same position, with the exact same coffee mug that I do almost every single morning. This familiar rhythm and routine brings some much-needed comfort and predictability, especially lately. The reason this is my favorite spot in the entire house is because the view faces a beautiful, expansive window. It's probably 12 feet high and maybe 8 feet wide. And for years, I have watched a very large tree weather the seasons. New buds forming, leaves flourishing, leaves dropping, a winter barrenness. Repeat. This has been the cycle I have watched for over 10 years. And today, God invited me to see something a bit differently. It's Good Friday, and growing up, I struggled mightily to understand why we ever attach the word good to Friday on Good Friday. We say the words, "It is finished," meaning salvation is ours, yes. At the same time, the painful reality that Good Friday is the most unimaginable and difficult day Christ ever encountered often invokes real anxiety for me. The cross is the place where joy and sorrow meet. Yet sorrow comes first. Sorrow is painful and invokes anxiety. The differing view this morning came when I glanced up at this tree. It's an appropriately gray morning, and because the leaves haven't yet come into full growth, the barren tree is still quite visible. This particular tree, for the very first time, gifted an opportunity to humbly and painfully reflect on the realities of the cross of Christ. I heard the words from Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me, and are so far from my cry and from the words of my distress?" Ah, yes, Jesus understands anxiety. Jesus understands what it feels like to be at the end of the rope of a spiritual tug-of-war. Continuing to glance at this tree, I was reminded that God's rescue mission is ongoing because it is finished. Our human frailties and sins die on the cross. And Good Friday is a powerful reminder of God's ongoing love story, which isn't without anxiety, my friends. This week, I have been praying a lot to seek God's wisdom for us in this season of heightened anxiety. In one of Brene Brown's recent podcasts themed Unlocking Us, she shares that anxiety is one of the most contagious emotions we experience. Think about that for a moment. Anxiety is one of the most contagious emotions we experience. And she further explains that rarely is anxiety a function of one individual. It often belongs to a group, a work team, a family, a group of friends. And she invites us to think about how we respond to the anxiety, because it is a powerful contagion. So when anxiety surfaces, our history, the ways that we have responded to anxiety in the past, deeply influence our behavior. And in this time of social distancing, it's helpful to monitor our personal motivations and the physical cues that our bodies are giving us. And we really can learn to trust them. People all around have been sharing how they are close to or have experienced breakdowns. So to share what I mean by examining our motivations and our physical cues to monitor how we are dealing with anxiety, I would like to share how I totally missed the mark on this earlier this week. So please know that I prayerfully bring these thoughts not because I have them mastered. Instead, it's a reminder to myself how much I fall short of God's glory, even under the best of intentions. So, like many of you, patience was wearing thin this week. Having not managed Zoom scheduling with any kind of breathing room, literally not enough time to use the bathroom in between sessions. My thoughts, my nonverbal cues, and inner critic moved away from God. And this showed up. My nonverbal expressions revealed confliction and agitation. My follow-up texts were too critical and selfish. Under more normal circumstances, my reaction hopefully would have been different. However, I'm painfully aware that I am still incredibly responsible for my contributions to God's mission, large or small. I hadn't paid attention to the cues my body was giving me. Shallow breathing, clenched fists. Insert your anxiety reaction here. It wasn't of God. And it really wasn't until the next day that I brought myself to call and apologize. My agitated and judgmental behavior raised the conflict and anxiety in this situation. My thoughts were not compassionate, graceful, loving, calm, and certainly not detached from my ego. If anxiety is the most contagious emotion, I'm more aware than ever before how my response, how our response and presence in these situations can ramp up or tamp down anxiety. As God would have it, my colleague was far more gracious than I had been and quickly extended forgiveness. My hunch is that each one of us is having moments where we feel like we're at the end of our rope. And maybe you too can find comfort in knowing that Jesus really does understand us. Jesus really does understand our human anxieties. And even he too cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When we can drop the rope, the tug of war stops. It is finished. When we treat others with the compassion God offers, accepting, loving, and joyfully, we just might be what helps someone else have a breakthrough instead of a breakdown. For my colleague who was Christ to me this week, I give God thanks. For all of you who are listening, striving to breathe in Christ while exhaling unhelpful human limitations, I give God thanks. Most importantly, together, let us give thanks for a God who reveals God's selfless love so that we can be assured we are never alone, ever. Joy will rise from the sorrow. Blessings to you today and always.